Well, CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now from Washington. David, the Republicans have control of both houses plus the White House. They can't allow the government to shut down. What do you hear about what's going on?
Well, Pat, just this morning, a senior White House official telling me they want a budget deal separate from a DACA deal. They believe they can do both. That's the word from the White House this morning. Of course, Democrats have their own issues here. Do they really want to force a government shutdown over DACA, including DACA in a government funding bill? The White House is quick to point out that they will go back and say, hey, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi a few years ago were talking all the time about a clean government funding bill, that Republicans shouldn't try to attach anything to a government funding bill or a debt ceiling bill because you can't shut the government down. And now here are Chuck Schumer and Nancy, or as they're called, Chuck and Nancy, trying to indeed attach DACA to the government funding bill. If they continue this way, there's going to be problems, but we're going to see how it's going to have to play out here soon.
Well, the president apparently had a tour de force when he laid out the whole issue of DACA and what was happening before a bipartisan group. It was an amazing thing. Has that moved the needle any?
Well, according to Capitol Hill sources, there was one specifically I talked to this morning. He believes it will move folks in a positive direction to the point where there won't be a government shutdown. I'm not necessarily convinced of how much that meeting necessarily helped. I will say this, that the word up here in Washington is that they're going to do what they always do, Pat. It looks like it may be another short-term extension on this omnibus bill, you know, where everything's included, and that could last until March. And why March? Well, that's when President Trump had said DACA is going to be gone at that point. And so you've got the March deadline for DACA. You potentially could have a short-term spending bill that lasts until March, and then March, the Ides of March. Oh, my goodness. Everything could go down in March, and that's where the rubber may meet the road.
Well, David, in the bottom line, when you're doing a deal, you kind of ask the other side, what do you want? And then here's what we want, and then you try to accommodate each other. What do the Democrats want?
Well, beyond DACA, they obviously want a long-term extending for CHIP, you know, so the child's health insurance program. But the real issue here, Pat, is all about border security. This is the issue for Democrats here is what can they give Trump? What can they give Republicans without Trump coming out and declaring, I've got the money for a wall? They don't want to see that press conference. And I think that's really the rub here. Democrats are okay with border security as it relates to enhanced surveillance, cameras, more border patrolling. That's all fine. They've done that before. But they don't want to give this blank check, if you will, to the president to build one of those prototype walls. And I think that's really the sticking point here. Well,
David, you know, when you get right down to that wall, it's maybe $1.6 billion. It's minuscule in relation to the huge budget we've got for their nation. So what's the deal? Why don't they want to put up some money for this? I mean, there can't be a wall. We all know that. It's got to be electronic. There's got to be various ways of securing the border. What is the sticking point?
Pat, I got to tell you, I think it boils down to human nature. You know, I've been in this town for a while, and what I mean by human nature is they're not happy with this president. They do not like President Trump overall and the way he's doing business. And because of that, look, they didn't even vote at all on the tax bill. They gave him all sorts of problems on health care. Now they're challenging his mental capacity. Look, at every turn, they're trying to hurt this president. And so here we go again. You mentioned it's not a ton of money in the scheme of things, but they don't want him to have a victory. It's that simple. Human nature. They're angry, and they believe that this president shouldn't even be president, and I think that's at the heart of it.
You know, you ask yourself, I remember years ago when my father was serving in the Senate, there was comity between the Republicans and the Democrats, and they all tried to work on what's good for the nation. I don't see that anymore in Washington. It's what's good for our party and what will get an edge over the other guys.
No, it evaporated, actually, and as you know, Pat, it's been about 25 years now or so. You know, the Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan days are over. And really, I think it started back in Newt Gingrich's day as it relates to when he came on board and became the Speaker of the House and the contract with America. And from that point forward, we've been in a downward slide here in Washington. And come today, and here's President Trump having all sorts of problems.
Well, the last problem, Ron Rosenstein, Swag, whatever, appointed a special counsel. It was an insane move, but he did it because the Attorney General had recused himself. All right, Mueller is now talking about the possibility of interviewing Trump, and Trump would be insane to allow him to do that because of the threat of perjury. What do you hear about that?
Well, I think you're pretty much right along those same lines of what the White House is thinking. I don't think they have any intention of letting this president, first of all, sit for an interview as it relates to just having him talk one-on-one with Mueller's team. I think, if anything, it might be written questions, but even that I don't think is going to happen. As a matter of fact, President Trump said yesterday that it is, quote, unlikely that he, and this is his own words, unlikely that he will go ahead, excuse me, and sit down with the investigative team. Of course, the media is all up in arms saying, wait a minute, President Trump last year in one of his first press conferences said he'd be more than happy to sit down with anybody in the investigative team. The problem was he wasn't talking about this wide-ranging investigation that Mueller's got going on now. At the time when he said that, he was talking about the James Comey incident specifically. But of course, the media wants to lump the two together and make it look like Trump is now going back on that promise.
Well, David, we will watch with great interest what's going on. I appreciate your coverage. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat.